Good morning, everyone. Um, Welcome to the GDG Lagos meetup for October. Session is titled Optimizing for Performance on the Web. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can see you on the beach.
Right, I know. So that's just a virtual background. I'm not really on the beach. Yeah, so welcome. My name is Bola Hon. I'm a GDG co-organizer based in Lagos, Nigeria. And today we'll have Doug Silas, who is a Google developer expert, as well as a mobile performance expert. And hi, Doug. That's Doug. Yeah, that's Doug saying hi. And we'll just be taking us through a few concepts and things related to web performance as well. Just to give a brief intro, please feel free to share updates about what's going on here on social media. You can tag at GDG Lagos. Doug himself is on Twitter. You can tag him at Doug Silas. I'm also on Twitter if you want to catch up. You can also follow the GDG Lagos on our official developer page, where you can catch up with activities that are happening within GDG Lagos generally. Official hashtag for today is web performance, and hashtag webperf, hashtag GDG Lagos. So feel free to talk about it and tag a friend as well to join. A few house rules and a few things to note. Please mute when you're not speaking so that others can hear the speaker clearly. Use the chat box if you have questions. When Doug starts to share his presentation and his session with us, I will be dropping where you can also drop your questions. And please, most importantly, please respect each other. That's super important. And so yeah, right now I'll go ahead, before I hand over to Doug, a brief intro about Doug, right? So Doug is a freelance mobile performance expert and is studying the intersection of media and web performance. And Doug has books published around performance and is out of his busy schedule, agreed to come and speak with us about some of the things that are changing about how Google measures performance, especially as things are changing now. The core performance metrics for 2020 are things like large contextual paint, first input display, as well as cumulative layout sheets. And each of these speaks to different things, rating from performance to interactivity to how stable your visual is. Doug will be taking us in depth into this, and the next voice you'll be hearing from will be Doug. Doug, over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. And like you said, I mostly focus on images and video. And so I'm doing a lot with video these days, but when you guys asked me to speak, you asked me to actually just run through some testing of some websites and see what I look for in terms of performance things when I first look at a web page. And so I thought maybe I have some slides and stuff, but I thought maybe it would just be fun to just run right into a web page and see what I see and just sort of walk through the process that I go through when I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with a website. Or not what's wrong with the website. The website probably works just fine, but we're really worried about speed and performance. And so let me just show you some stats about speed and performance here, and then we'll go into the web page, I guess. So I'll share my screen. Ooh, it says you've disabled my attendee screen sharing.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
I'm working on that right away.
Now I can share my screen. Awesome. So I'll just share my screen. All right, so I have some slides here. So I like to talk about this one. So like 4 or 5 years ago, they did this study where they put sensors on people's heads to measure stress responses. And they actually found that people, when they had a slow mobile app or a slow mobile website, they got more stressed out than thinking about standing on the edge of a cliff, right? So if you think about, the idea of standing on the edge of a cliff, your heart starts racing, you get a little nervous. People actually got more nervous when the website was slow. And so some of the stats there, right? If a web page is slow, Google found that after 3 seconds, you lose half your customers. Half your customers start to bounce. If you artificially add half a second to the delay, your customers are more frustrated, less engaged. Both Amazon and Walmart, almost like 20 years ago, found that they lose revenue the slower the web page is, right? So when we build a page, we're often trying to get all the interactivity, so many features, so many rich experiences. But like if it's slow and your customers are pissed off before they actually even start using the web page, they're less likely to come back. They're less likely to finish their cart, all of these sorts of things. If you think about like when you go shopping, they often have happy music and bright lights, right? When you go into a store, because when it's happy music and bright lights, it lifts your mood and you spend more money. So what we really want customers to do, if you're building an e-commerce site, is that they feel happy when they're on your webpage, because then they will likely add more stuff to their cart and do their shopping. When I look at web pages, just because I generally look at images and videos, I look at those first. JavaScript and CSS and also play a big part in page load time. But let's just, in prep for this, I opened up 2 web pages. Let's see if I can find them. All right, so I went to college at the University of Wisconsin, and I thought, well, let's look at the athletics website. And if you guys have sites you'd like me to look at, just pop them in the window and we'll just do it. We can actually look at sites that you're interested in. We'll do it completely blindly rather than like, these aren't artificial, like I've actually loaded these pages, but we can actually look at them. So this is uwbadgers.com. I opened it up and I have my dev tools open, and I assume everyone here is familiar with dev tools, but I don't even know that the key command I almost know just sort of like instinctively. Like when people ask me what are the dev tools shortcut to open it, I never even actually know. Here it is. I haven't up. Chrome is mad at me. But if you go to more tools, dev tools, so it's Shift Command I on a Mac. I honestly don't know, because it's just sort of like what I press all the time on my computer. All right, so we start off. The first thing that happens is it loads the HTML, and it's 44 kilobytes. It's compressed. So I've got 2 lines here. This is the size of the HTML uncompressed. So there's 800K of HTML. That's a little ridiculous if you think about it. There's just a lot going on in here, it looks like. We could go through and do, figure out what's going on. 800K seems like a pretty big file, but you can see there's 2,000 lines. Oh, look. It looks like this is all commented out. So from 1835, what was it? I don't know. 1835, so to 33, so 1,500 lines are commented out. Maybe those are used in other ways, but they're commented out. So if they didn't need to be there, imagine if you took out 1,500 lines from a 3,500 line document, if they're all evenly spaced, we could, 15 over 35 is 3/7, so 42% smaller, right? So we could make this page And, you know, this is the first page that's loaded and has to be parsed, right? I mean, it's ignoring most of that, but if we could make this smaller, that would load faster. The second thing we've got is something here that failed because it's got a bad cert. So I don't even know what the heck that is. I don't even know what it's trying to ask for. It is looking for, I'm not even sure. And then we start getting into some JavaScript and some CSS, like that's all good. You know, in general, one way you can make web pages a lot smaller is by removing images. And actually, so if you look here at the filters, you can filter on images and see what images are being downloaded. And you can see, you know, there's a tracking GIF here. We've got the nav logo. It's an SVG. I think it's the W up here, right? We've got some pictures. We've got another SVG, or SVGs are great. They're small, they're vector graphics. They're generally really small, that's great. We've got a promo background, which is like, it looks like almost like a 1 or 2 pixel background. But then we start seeing, you know, these are all 5K, 6K, you know, that's kind of reasonable, 7K. They're all really small, but then we start seeing some big images, right? So we have this image of, this is the college campus at the University of Wisconsin. And if we actually look, oh, it's here. It's this background image, right? That you can sort of see. It's right here. You can see there's the football stadium and then some buildings, right? They've got this giant image that like no one can actually see on the webpage. You could probably lower the quality of that a whole lot because it's kind of hidden. You kind of just get the edges. You could even probably even just like imagine if we, let's see. Here it is. All right, so what if we save image as parallax? It's in my downloads folder. We come to my downloads folder. Downloads folder, we open up date modified. All right, we open up parallax here. What if we just, because no one can see the middle of this thing, what if we annotate this? And I'm just doing this in, right, I'm doing it just like this. What if we did this? And save that. I don't know what size that's going to go down to. Right, it's now 197 kilobytes because we just pulled out like a whole boatload of pixels in the middle that no one can actually ever see. Right, so there's some tricks there, right? That's not even really a fancy trick. It's just something we can do to make this smaller. I see a lot of images that show up on web page that are downloaded, but they never actually appear on the page. And maybe it's like a mobile versus desktop, or a, but we can use JavaScript. If it's not showing up on the mobile screen, I think this might be the mobile screen because of the way I have my dev tools here organized. Yeah, all right, so now we've got the big screen. Again, the parallax, it still doesn't show up, right? We could totally get away with putting a big white space in the middle of that. All right, other things I want to look at here. There was one file that loaded that totally blew my mind, and we'll see it here as I scroll. Maybe we'll see it. All right, well, what we'll do is we'll order by size. All right, and what we can see here is, indeed, we have a 21 megabyte GIF on this web page, and I'll show you where it is because I found it, because I was like, what the heck is going on here with a GIF? Maybe I can show it. It shows up. Here it is. It is this picture of the golf course, right? It is a slideshow of the golf course. It is a 21, well, where did it go? I don't know what I did there. It's this one. I was trying to do a preview. It is this GIF file. So if I open this GIF file right here, it is a really, really, really huge It's still loading because it's 21 megabytes. I don't know if this needs to be a GIF or if it even needs to be this fancy. But what a GIF does is it is probably playing at 20 frames per second these same images over and over and over again. And so an animated GIF literally is the same image being displayed over and over and over again. This one could probably be displaying at 1 frame a second, have 5 pictures, and be like 300K. But because it's playing it at 25 or 20 frames per second, it's just insanely sized. And so that's just a poorly built GIF. And really, just like when you test your web page, if your web page is 29 megabytes and one of them is this one image, that's something you really should look at. If you're interested in like resizing images and how to optimize images, I can talk about that. I've also blogged about this a lot. I actually did a study on websites that had images with COVID in the name. And so what happened in April and May of this year is all of a sudden people were responding to COVID by adding new images to their web pages. And when they did that, they weren't optimizing those images. Those images tended to be like 40 to 50% larger than all other images on their web page because they were just trying to respond to COVID and like making and not optimizing them. And so they ended up just being super duper huge and ginormous. What else do we have here that's really big? We've got 700 kilobytes of footwear. So some shoes. We've got raising money, right? So we have all these PNGs. And so PNGs are great. You can tell that these are transparent. They have an alpha channel. And that way you can see what's behind. And so maybe it's like right here. So you can see the dots behind it. Something like that, right? So then they're transparent, and that's kind of cool. They're really, really big. There are other formats that support transparency, WebP among them, and now WebP is supported in Safari, or is soon to be supported in Safari 14. So we can start moving away from PNGs and make this a WebP, and it can get significantly smaller. Let's see, I saw something in the chat. Maybe somebody had a web page. Let's look at.
Yes, so someone had mentioned that we should take a look at one of the local websites.
All right, yeah, let's do it. Let's just figure it out. Is that dot?
Yeah, that's Bet Niger, BET
9JA.com. All right. Bet9ja.com. And then I will open up my dev tools to start, and you can see I've got, now my dev tools are at the bottom. So we're going to get the desktop version when we do this. I will close the chat window. We'll hit OK, and we'll load. I'm looking at 30. Oh, so let's look at all. I was still looking at images. 34 requests, 1.8 megabytes. The average web page is like 1.8 megabytes. Like this isn't outrageously huge. I mean, it's big. Data's expensive. I get it, but it's not that bad. Let's see what we have here in terms of stuff that showed up. So the first thing that happens is we have a redirect from HTTP to HTTPS, right? Because this is all HTTPS, that's good. We've got the marketing CSS, we've got jQuery, we've got more JavaScript. If you look here, you can see that these are all compressed, right? So the jQuery is 85 kilobytes, but compressed it's 42. If these are the same size, that means that the server doesn't have gzip or Brotli turned on, and that is text compression. If you can compress a text file, it goes over the network faster. It's just decompression's really fast on computers and on phones, and then it just has to process. So processing JavaScript is a huge issue. I don't think I'm going to get into it in the context of this presentation because there's a lot of blog posts out there on how to really go through the JavaScript and optimize the JavaScript on your web page. But we look through here, you know, we've got a background PNG That PNG is 500K, right? And so it's this gentleman right here with this thumbs up. That might be, we might be able, let's see what we can find out about this image. If I open that image up, I have a plugin that will tell me all about this image. So this image is 600 by 768. Like, we could probably get some better compression here. Like, I'm not sure exactly what's going on. One tool I use a lot when I'm making images smaller is, it's a tool called Cloudinary. And so Cloudinary is, I have a free account, but what I can do is, this is a picture of me. And so what it's doing is it's fetching this image from WordPress, and then I can optimize it. And so I'm gonna look at this image here and load it up through the Cloudinary proxy here. First, we'll see if it works. Sometimes it doesn't work. It works. All right, so now what we can do is we can try to make it smaller. So I'm gonna do Q auto. So quality auto, lower the quality, but so the human can't, so that it still looks good on the human eye. And when I do that, 485 from, I don't remember what the original one was. Yeah, I mean, I've already 485 from 522. So I took out 38 kilobytes. It's not a huge amount. The next thing I bet is we can make this a WebP. So I'm going to say format auto. Give me the automatic format adjustment to make this super small. And now it's a WebP and it's 100K. You know, when I look at this web page, it's not outrageously bad, right? It's 1.8 megabytes. We've got some CSS. We've got, oh, these are all PNGs, but they're pretty small. We've got some fonts, but that's fine, right? You want your custom fonts. What else do we have going on here that might, 70, that's just JavaScript. Do you guys know Web Page Test? That's another tool that if you are into studying the web and web performance, the guy who wrote Web Page Test just got a job at Catchpoint so that he can do Web Page Test full time. He's been doing this as a side project for, I don't know, 10 years now. Like, it's been pretty impressive what he has been doing as just a side project. And now he's gonna be working on it full time. So I can test this. It's testing it out of Virginia. Let's see if we have so these are all actual real devices or test instances all around the world. So we can actually test. These aren't really helping us geographically. I don't think South Africa is going to help us that much more. So obviously when we test a Nigerian website in America, we're going to have some latency, but let's just go for it. Let's see what happens. I'm running one test on Chrome desktop on a 5 megabit per second network. Other people use this service, so you can see I'm waiting behind one test. It shouldn't take that long. We'll give it a second. The other cool thing about Web Page Test while we're waiting, I'll just walk through this really quickly, is I showed all the locations. Other cool things we can do is we can actually test this on real mobile devices. So Pat, the guy who built this, has like 1,000 devices in his basement. Other things we can do is we can turn off JavaScript, see what happens. We can change user agent strings. There's like, there are literally books written about all the stuff you can do here. All right, but we have our result. So when we look, even going halfway around the world, the time to first byte was 600 milliseconds, which is pretty fast. The largest contentful paint is a little bit slow. That's this big image, right? We saw, you know, maybe we didn't see, but you know, when I was loading the image by itself, you saw this took some time to show up on the screen. When you have a 400K image, it just takes a little bit of time to put it on the screen. So this is a little bit, the LCP, the largest contentful paint, came in at 2.6 seconds, just because that big image took a little bit longer. Layout shift. So have you ever read a web page and like an image pops in and all the text flies around and it's really frustrating? That's sort of what cumulative layout shift is measuring. We got a 0 here, so we're good. Blocking time is like when JavaScript prevents you from interacting with the page. Again, we're really, really low here. We got a green. You can see it took 4 seconds fully loaded, 35 requests. It says 900K. I got 1.8 megabytes on my computer. I'm not sure what the difference is. Other things we can look at. We can see it's mostly images, JavaScript, and fonts. This is in bytes, right? So these are the requests, but you know what we're interested in is like most of what's being downloaded is images, and it's probably mostly the image of thumbs up guy. Because it's 400K, right? 400K, that would be, you know, out of 900, right? That's 50-some%. All right, so the other thing we can look at is the waterfall. And the waterfall here is showing the order of stuff that's being downloaded. So we get the web page, we get the marketing, and then after the JavaScript is parsed, we start getting this PNG. So it took a second before this PNG started downloading. And this is just the background PNG. Which one is this? Let's take a look. This is saying 500. Maybe that's the, let's see what this is. That's the guy. All right. Right. But why did that wait so long? So one thing we can look at here is why it took so long for that PNG to get requested. Let me see if I can move the zoom control. The zoom controls, there we go, I moved them. They're right at my tabs. It's making it a little hard to click. All right, so why, oh, that's Badgers. All right, let's come back over here. So why is that this is being requested by the CSS? So this can't actually go until this CSS is processed. Which CSS? The marketing min. But the marketing min CSS is calling this Google Fonts CSS, and it looks like the image isn't actually starting to download until all of those things are done. So if we could speed up the Google Fonts CSS, perhaps. This is actually the fonts. So somehow, right, one thing you could play around here is like, what if we start prefetching this? And so what prefetching means is, if you look here, when a connection is made, there's DNS, then there's a connection, and then you make the SSL connection, and then you download the thing. And you can see after the marketing file is downloaded, we make a connection to the Google Fonts, bing, 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 this, right? So if we could get rid of 28, 30, 46, do that ahead of time, you know, where it isn't blocking this download, we might be able to speed up 100 milliseconds, give or take, to make this load faster, and then this comes down. Perhaps we could put this in the actual HTML as opposed to the CSS, and then we could, you know, save another 100 milliseconds. Start downloading this giant file here at 0.6 instead of 1, and it would just be there 400 milliseconds faster. Other things we've got going on here, we've got, why are we getting connections in SSLs to different places, even though these are already, so these are all sort of like micro improvements. I think making this image smaller obviously will make the page load faster. This seemed to take a long time too. What does this one look like? So this little tiny, for some reason, took 244 milliseconds to get the right arrow, this little guy right here. And this little logo, the little football, again, 500 milliseconds. There might be things we could do here to speed up the download of these so they don't take details. You know, if we could remove some of these things so that just downloading it is faster. Because the content download here is 5 milliseconds, but it took 250 milliseconds to get that first byte. in general, it's not too bad. Other things we can look at.
Hey, Doug. So
Yes.
there's a question in the chat, right?
Okay.
The question is, how were you able to see the file size versus the gzipped size?
Okay, so in Chrome DevTools, yeah, I see that. All right, so, okay, so when you're in Chrome DevTools, which I right here, see how there's this use large request rows? If I do this, this is how big everything is downloaded. If I click large request rows, it gives me a little bit more information. And that little bit of more information is showing me that, for example, this font is not being compressed. It says the request says, hey, we can support CSS or we can support gzip, but it is not being sent with gzip. So this font is not being compressed. So it was 16.3 over the network and the resource is 16. This font as well was not compressed. However, this analytics JavaScript, I don't know if you can see that. That's like a zoom thing. All right. But here you can see it is, the resource size is 40. I'd point at it with my mouse, but if I move my mouse, it disappears. But you see the little pop-up. It says 19.1 kilobytes over the network, resource size 46. So that's telling me it was compressed when it was sent over the network, right? It's 3 times smaller, give or take. Right, so we can see which ones, this one's half, right? It was 85, it's 85 originally, it was 42 over the wire. So with text files, you can generally get really good compression. If we actually look at this Hotjar, Hotjar is 360, but it was 72 over the network. You don't use compression, you don't use gzip or Brotli compression for images because images already have compression like built into the algorithm to build an image. So gzipping an image doesn't save you anything. It just makes, it actually sometimes makes the files bigger because it's like putting compression on top. I don't know if you've ever tried this, but if you compress something and then try to, like, if you gzip something and then you try to gzip it again, like gzip the gzip, it doesn't save you anything because it's already zipped. It's the same idea. You can't gzip an image because it's already compressed. But in general, like, this page doesn't really throw me, it looks, maybe you know what, this is just the welcome page, right? So maybe I should go to the site. Let's see what happens when I go to the site. All right, now we're getting into some megabytes. 5.3. Everything. All right, let's see what we've got going on here. I'll just make this bigger. Let's look at images. I'm going to sort it by size. So we've got this one. I was actually, well, no, so look, check out this. This is interesting. Is that just reloading every couple seconds? Let's just see. Like, why do we have so many of these? I think it's loading a new one every couple seconds. See, it's loading, and I have my cache turned off. So let's see if it has caching in there. So a cache header says, hey, browser, you're downloading this file. Keep it in your local cache for a day or a week or a month or whatever it is, so that you don't have to download it again. And what I see here is how to deposit.jpg is downloading over and over and over again. In my DevTools, I have my caching turned off. And I see that this has a cache header of 10 minutes, 10 minutes and 38 seconds, 638 seconds. So what I can do is I can do that and say, all right, let's just trust my cache. And if I trust my cache, that probably will stop downloading over and over and over again. Same here with the Super 9jar file here. So we can preview that, right? So these were just downloading over and over again because I had my caching turned off. And for some reason, jQuery, This is being requested by jQuery. I think I saw that. It shows it here. Yeah, so jQuery is like, hey, I need this file. And now that I have my cache turned on, it's just loading it from cache over and over and over again, which is good. But if you didn't have cache turned on, it would just keep downloading the same files over and over and over again. So some of these may be downloaded multiple times. No, this one is a different file. So let's see what this is. These are different games, I guess you can play. They're all 23 kilobytes, not a big deal. Let's order by size. And these are all reasonable, like 50K each. Another thing we can do here, and I didn't show this on the last page, but let's go to my show console drawer. And sometimes it's a trick to make that. You can make this bigger by dragging. Oh no, here it is. It's already up like this. No. Here's my console drawer. All right, so here's my console drawer. And we can come here and we can do coverage. So I'm going to reload the page and then we'll look at coverage. So what coverage is doing is it's saying, all right, you're downloading this liquid JavaScript. How many functions in this JavaScript are actually being used on this web page? And in this case, you know, the unzipped version of this is 448 kilobytes, and we can probably find it here. We'll sort by size again. Find it. You kind of like almost want like many monitors when you're doing this because you run out of space really, really quickly. All right, so let's just do bundle. All right, so yeah, so it was loaded from cache. It's 5. So in this case, when I reloaded the page, because I have my caching enabled, it was locally stored in my cache. But what we can see is 223K of the functions in this JavaScript bundle, half of it isn't used. For jQuery, they're only using 10% of jQuery. So like if you're building your own JavaScript bundles, like here's Hotjar, they're using half of it. If we look at this one, this live.min.css, they're not using any of this CSS. So they're just downloading this CSS file. And it is, let's see, live.min.css. OBCSS. So it's 119K. I don't know how much would be downloaded, but let's say it's 20, 30K. They're using none of it, right? So that's, on this page, you actually don't even need to download this file because it is not being used at all. It may be used on other pages inside this website, so having it locally stored in the cache is a good thing. Like, so you download it on the first page where you're using it and on subsequent pages where you are using it. But if you were only visiting this page, that's 110K that isn't even needed. And so what you can see here is blue is good, red is bad. And so if you have more red than blue, you should start looking to see if you can optimize some of that. Again, we've got a coupon that's not being, you know, these are sort of micro performance improvements, but if you can take this CSS file that's 93 kilobytes, like I think we saw that there was a CSS at the very beginning that was stopping the loading of the page. Web page test. Marketing.min. Oh, that was the other page. Let's see if that's on here. It's not loaded on this page. But we could go back, and if they're not using that much of the marketing.min, and you could make this file smaller, it's going to download faster, which means you get to all this other stuff faster, which will make your page load faster. Again, a quick way to make sure for the page to show up on the screen, all of the CSS has to be downloaded and parsed to show up on the screen. So if you can remove some of that CSS, stuff is going to show up on the screen faster. None of these have videos, which is also a huge way to improve performance. Another page that somebody wants me to look at. Let's see. Oh, here's a chat. Maybe we've got a good page. A total download of 7 megabytes. Let's go back to that page. Did I shut it? So some of that was on one of, I think it was 7 megabytes when I first reloaded this page. But if you remember, I had my caching turned off, and for some reason, jQuery was downloading images over and over and over again. Those files actually had a cache header. So when you see that 7 megabytes, it's because of the way I was testing, and because I had my caching turned off and the way jQuery was behaving, it just kept downloading these files over and over and over again. So how do you compress files and upload them on the network? So when you have a web server and you're hosting your HTML and your CSS, one thing you can do to make those files smaller is, let me just go get this so I can see everything. I'm going to close this, come back to network. Oh, I see. So if we look at this file, let's go do a new page. CNN.com is always a good one because it's usually pretty horrible. All right. Oh, let's disable my cache and then do it again. Well, I'm just going to close that. We'll start over again. I'll do it in incognito mode just to make sure, because I have loaded CNN on my computer recently. All right, so I do CNN.com. Okay, we'll just accept everything. Donald Trump's in the hospital, blah, blah, blah. All right, so now we go at everything that's been downloaded, right? We can see there's just crazy amounts of stuff being downloaded here. So how do we turn on compression? So CNN, edition.cnn.com, you can see is 1.1 megabytes, but it's compressed to 158 kilobytes. So let's look at the headers here. So you see how it says that, hey, I've encoded this with gzip. You do that on your server. So when you spin up a web server, you turn on gzip. Another form of compression is called Brotli, and you save a little bit with Brotli. There's some trade-offs with Brotli, and then it's a little slower to make things, to zip things, so you don't want to do it on the fly. Like if you're dynamically creating content and then serving it, you want to use gzip because that's going to compress it faster. But if it's a static file, you can use Brotli and save like 5% on the file. So you turn this on your server. So if you save a file on your web server and your web server has gzip, it compresses it for all network transactions. Oh, my laptop is at 14%. Thank you for checking that out. When it beeps at me, we'll go find the cord. So text file compression is done by your server kind of automatically. If you turn on gzip or Brotli on your server, like that's all taken care of for you. The other thing you can do is set your cache header. And so in this case, CNN sets a cache header for 1 minute, 60 seconds. And that sort of makes sense, right? Because like if something new happens with Donald Trump in the hospital, they don't want you seeing a cached version of this. Right? They want you to see the latest news. So they'll give you the latest news within 60 seconds. You can see it's actually 231 seconds old. So for 4 minutes, there's been no change to whatever's on CNN, right? The headline hasn't changed. None of the other stories have changed, blah, blah, blah. So you can set your cache control age to a different amount of time. So one thing you might do is, like if you have the CNN logo, maybe you set that for a cache time of like a year, right? Because you're not going to change your logo very often. And if you did change your logo, you would just point to CNN2.logo, right? You wouldn't actually point to the same. You could just change the URL. But for things that change often, like a weather page, you might not want to have any caching at all because the weather can change very, very quickly. To compress images, there are a lot of tools out there. One tool that I use every day is called ImageOptim. And you can see it's just sitting here on my, with all the other things that I have open.
I was going to ask that. I think you stopped sharing your screen.
Oh, crap. I'm so sorry. Let me turn that back on again. Sharing my screen again. All right. So sorry about that. So down here in my toolbar, I have ImageOptim. And so when I download an image, I can just drag it into ImageOptim and it will optimize my images for me automatically. There are a lot of tools out there that will do this for you automatically. There's a great tool by the folks at Google called Squoosh. Yeah, it's squoosh.app. Oh, whatever, I agree. I'm in incognito mode, so it doesn't know who I am. So you can drag and drop images here and it will compress them for you automatically. There are a lot of tools out there that'll do this for you automatically. They're actually, Cloudinary is a company. It's a paid service. There's a free option, but if you start doing a lot, it starts costing money. But tools like ImageOptim, which is down here somewhere, is free. Squoosh is free. There are a lot of tools out there that are free that will do image optimization for you. And then back to the chat. There are a bunch of questions here. Chat.
I could read those out if you.
Oh no, that's cool. Do you have a background in media content? Do you have to learn front end development to become an expert in web optimization? You know, I think having an understanding of what CSS and HTML and JavaScript do is important. You know, I honestly mostly focuses on images and videos, and you can make a web page a lot smaller and faster by doing that. But yeah, I think if you really want to be an expert in web optimization, you do need to have some understanding of what you can do with your CSS and your JavaScript to make it faster. So if the image sent isn't within your control, I'm gonna grab my charger really quick and then I'll answer that one. I'll be 2 seconds, just a sec.
Okay, just before Doug comes back, please feel free to add your questions, whatever questions you have about optimization, about web performance, please feel free to add them in the chat. So Doug can take a look and answer them. Keep them coming.
I sort of forget how much Zoom and sharing my screen and everything, like I forget that my fan turns on and everything gets really hot. So how do you proxy images? So there are ways to do that. There are proxy servers that will optimize the images. I kind of showed you Cloudinary, which again is a service that you kind of have to pay for. But what you can do with Cloudinary, let's come over here and find, let's close this guy. Right, this is a big image right here. I've now proxied it through Cloudinary and I can do some optimizations just in the URL line. I can actually set the width too. I can set the width to 100. And when I do that, now the image is super small, right? It's 3K because it's a thumbnail. So now you've got this almost like a proxy service where you can take, right, somebody's generating a bunch of images where you're like, holy cow, those are ginormous. I want to make them smaller. You can send them through a proxying service like this and do all the resizing and then serve them to your customers. Squoosh, yes, squoosh.app. Webpagetest.org is like, it's Optim. Image Optim. Like optimize. I, 'cause Yeah, there. Thank you. um, let's see. Other things we could do with web page test that's kind of interesting is you can actually watch a video of the page loading. And sometimes you'll see things when the page loads, like the content shifting. Like if we can actually see stuff bouncing around, then you know you've got a problem. And this is great because maybe you don't have an iPhone and you want to see what it looks like on an iPhone. So a couple things here as that page loads. Let's start at the beginning again. Let's see if I can do that. All right, here we go. Let's start back at the beginning. All right, so we get the header. See, do you see all that text like appear and then disappear? Like that's frustrating. I hate it when web pages do that. Like it'd be really nice if like there's content and then like I think what's happening is, let me get rid of DevTools here. I think what's happening is all the content below this image was loaded and then the image popped in and it just like it content shifted everything. And so that's really bad. Like if what you should do is set the size of this image and then it'll be a screen, like a blank screen, but you don't get like the bouncing around. There was something else weird. Oh, you'll see as something else loads. I seem to remember here at the end, you see all of the text just shift a little bit. Let's see if you see it. Did you see that? It was almost like when this picture right here loaded in. I'll just rewind a little bit more. The image is there. When that popped in, it shifted everything. And it's kind of like you added an advertisement and you shifted the whole page. And that's really annoying, right? The last thing you want to do is have an advertisement, you know, your revenue stream frustrate people from visiting your page. Are there any latency while loading a bunch of... So a page can't show up until all the CSS has been downloaded, parsed, and laid out. So the more and more CSS files you have, the longer it takes for the CSS to download, the longer it takes for the CSS to get rendered, the longer you're going to have in latency for the page to show up. So when we look, let's go back to the test result here. There are a bunch of vertical lines on the waterfall that tell you like when the page starts to render and things. And in this case, they're all really, really tight here at the beginning. So it's really kind of hard to see. But you have to get the CSS loaded before the page can show up on the screen. So bunch of CSS, you might start seeing some problems. Other things I see a lot is, I'm gonna see if I can find an example of it. Let's see here, info.
Look, I think there's a question that you missed, right? From Damila. It says, how do I save data when proxying to a partner server? That is, in a situation where the image size being sent is not within my control.
So are we trying to save data? Are you trying to save data on your phone? Like, or is this like, you're building a web page and somebody's just put a bunch of images on a server and you can't make it smaller? So I sort of went through that here. Like here is a server with an image and I'm running it through a proxy and I'm making the image smaller. So you can do that. There are proxy services that the image is still being hosted there, but I'm grabbing it and resizing it and then serving it from a different server. Now, on some phones, there's a thing called light mode. Like on Android Chrome, you can turn your phone on light mode and it will actually make sure the images are smaller. Like it will do everything it can to not download as many images. So you can actually save data as a user. Let's see if I can find, I'm gonna move my DevTools to the side. So one thing I see a lot of, and this website, iowa.com, this is the one that I remember. They may, they sort of changed the way their website worked when COVID hit, and they took away their video. So let's see what happens here. Let's go to media. All right, so what we can see here is, this is a gym where it's like a climbing gym where people climb up a climbing wall. It's in Iowa, which is in America. Now it says you got to wear a mask, blah, blah, blah. If you look here, there's a background video. And this video downloaded 4.3 megabytes of video. But do you see a video on this page? We can actually come here. Another thing you can do with Chrome, with DevTools, you can look at the elements. And so we can actually look for the video in the elements here. So we can do find, we can look for .mp4, and it shows us here that here we have a video, plays in line, autoplay muted. So this is a looping video, right? Autoplay muted loop. So it's looping through this video, and there's a video on the page. If we look here, let's look at the video. This is the CSS for the video. And so this video is actually right here. You can see where it's being highlighted. It's just an image because they have the video set to display none. So on smaller screens, this web page says, we don't want to show the video on smaller screens. Now the problem with this is, it's nothing wrong with not showing the video. So if I actually go like this and I make the page bigger, we get the video, right? Now we can watch the video of people climbing in the climbing gym. And now if I go smaller again, I think it'll still be there. Oh, no, it disappears because the CSS says, now that the screen is below, we can figure out what the breakpoint is. 600, 650. So at some point, there's a breakpoint in their CSS that says somewhere around 780, right? So 760, 770, they're hiding the video. Now, CSS is great. They're not showing the video. The video isn't optimized for mobile devices. The problem is CSS is a rendering. It doesn't actually tell the browser not to download that video. So what ends up happening on mobile devices, and this is true on, I would say, thousands of mobile websites, they want to hide the video. They want to hide the background video on mobile, so they use CSS to hide it. Unfortunately, you can see it downloaded the rest of the video. So the full video is 7. So we can see the response says this video is 7.2 megabytes. And at the very beginning, because this video is set to autoplay, the browser's like, oh, crud, this video is set to autoplay. I had better start downloading as much of this video immediately so that it can start autoplaying. But then the CSS hides it. So somewhere like in a layer, in a hidden layer, there's this video is actually playing on my computer, but no one can see it. And it ends up costing the user, 4.3 megabytes to download a video that they can actually never, ever see. So when you're dealing with video, it's really important to make sure that if you're not going to show the video to your end user, don't download it, because that's a lot of data that we're wasting. Yeah.
Right. So just picking up off of that as well. So what strategies would you suggest? I mean, if they are not choosing CSS, if they're not using CSS to hide the video, what strategies would you suggest in that regard? How to go about that? JavaScript kind of thing, or what exactly?
So with images, there's actually, you can use you can use media queries. You can say, if the screen is this big, show this image. If it's this big, show this image. If it's really small, show no image. There's no such thing as media queries with video. So what you should really do is just use some JavaScript. And if the screen is too small, don't insert the source. And if the screen is the right size, insert the right source. Now, the cool thing about that is, of course, you could actually have multiple sizes of that video. So if they're looking at it on a 4K TV, you could download a really nice version of that video. Whereas if they're on a mobile device, maybe you show them a different size video. For longer videos, things like video streaming is the right way to go. Video streaming automatically gives you the right size video for the device. Often when you're using video streaming, you encode it in different sizes. And so then the video player says, slow network, small video. Oh, fast network, big video, high quality video. But also fast network, small screen, small video. You don't need 1080p video when you're just on this, right? Maybe if you're this way, you need 1080p, but if you're this way, you don't need 1080p video, and you can serve a smaller video. It takes up less data, it downloads faster, and the user still has the same experience. But, you know, in general, so many devices now can handle this one actually on a small screen plays the video, right? So you get the video playing on every single screen. And so you can see every single screen, whether you want it or not. I want to say it's 17 megabytes. I don't remember offhand. Let's see. Let me see. 19.8 megabytes. So no matter what, if you go to this webpage, you get this video of this college campus with like video going all over the place. And you don't get a choice. You can't turn that on or off. It's just delivered. I don't remember the size of the video, but you know, we could go and find out like how big is, we can actually do that. I built a tool that will do this. So I'll put this in the chat to probe. Here we go. So this is actually going to tell me the size of the video. So this video, this background video on and so what you do here is you take the URL and then you just go query URL equals and put the video. And so this is a 720p video. It's 1280 by 720. Another thing I see a lot, and let's see if it's still there. Here's another example of a website that does funny things. It's Kate Moss's modeling agency. I don't remember the URL. Here it is, katemossagency.com. I should have known. All right, you see this background video? There's like there are people smoking cigarettes and they're like doing all sorts of like fancy model things and, you know, lounging against a green wall, whatever they're doing. Sorry, we'll get the MP4 here, MP4. All right, so here's the video. Let's see if I can open this. And you can't hear it, but there's audio, right? Let's see, where is that? Right, I can turn audio on and off. I can adjust the audio. A background video doesn't actually need audio, right? So if you have a background video, it's silent. So this video has actually got a significant amount of kilobytes. It's a 2-minute, it's got 2 minutes of audio that no one can ever hear. So you should remove the audio from a background video because no one can ever hear it. I have other comments about like a 2-minute background video. How many people actually sit at the top of the page and be like, I'm gonna sit here for 2 minutes and watch these kids smoke cigarettes and, you know, lounge around and be silly. Nobody watches a background video that's that long. They should be like under a minute, in my opinion. They should be under a minute long. So if we look at this one into my, the probe tool that I just showed, probe. A couple things. This is a 1080p video. And so there's 2 streams. There is a stream for the video, H.264, index 0. And then index 1 is MP3. It's audio at 48,000 kilohertz. So I think it'll show me the bit rate. All right, so we got a bit rate of 191 kilobits per second. So that's a crazy amount of data that we're wasting for something that no one can hear. So there are a lot of things we can do here to make this video smaller. The video is 18 megabytes. So there's a lot of things here that we can do to improve the delivery of this web page. You know, video files are really, oh, that's the credits. I was like, what the heck is that? All right. These are actually the background video has credits. That's sort of ridiculous. All right. So other things, tools for web performance optimization. Honestly, web page test is the tool to start out with. Dev tools. So Chrome has dev tools, Firefox has dev tools, Safari has dev tools. They all do things slightly differently. I use Chrome, so I'm usually in Chrome DevTools. When it comes to image and video optimization, you can read a lot online on how to do it. I've blogged a lot on my webpage on how to optimize images and video. There are a lot of people in the web performance community blog about the things that they've seen that make the web faster. There are a lot of tricks to like prefetch and preload things that you're going to need ahead of time. And honestly, as browsers change, the rules change. So, you know, since I've started, the rules have changed. It used to be that maybe you use Google Fonts because other websites may use the same font. But now Chrome and Safari sandbox the cache. So if CNN uses that font and I use the same font, it's stored in the CNN cache and in my cache. So that's not something you do anymore. You store the font on your own web page. Page speed insights is awesome. Web.dev has a lot written about. I'm just looking at stuff that's in the comments in the chat. Web.dev has a whole section on how to measure and test your web page. Another one that's really good, Perf Planet. All right, this is from 2012, but I'll just put this link in there for you guys. But for 10 years, Stefan has been doing an advent calendar. And so we'll just look at 2019. And so every day there's a new blog post on how to do performance stuff. And so so that's giving you 30 articles times 10 years, right? That's a whole lot of reading. Some of this stuff down here doesn't hold anymore because the browsers have changed so much. So start at the beginning and work backwards. Not all of it will hold for stuff that you're building. So, you know, you can skip some of those. Other things you can do is if you have access to your analytics, right? Look at your RUM data, your real user measurements. Look at your Google Analytics. See what devices people are using. Maybe you can optimize your images specifically for the devices that people are using. If everybody's on the desktop or if everyone's on mobile, maybe you change the way you're focusing your development. You know, many people are building on their computers and they've got an extra monitor. And so, you know, you're building it and it looks fabulous. And then you look and 80% of your customers are on this. So maybe you should be focusing your development for your 80% of customers. There's a lot of stuff out there that you can do.
So quick question, Doug. Do you make use of a combination of tools or when you're trying to do your audits, or do you just stick to one? The reason I ask as well is because, you know, different tools measure different things.
Yes.
So how are you sure that you're not just trying to solve a problem that is specific to just the way one particular vendor sees performance?
That is a good point. So, and it's also really important, like if I'm testing only in Chrome, I may not see optimizations for folks in Safari, right? And there may be things that are done, like maybe some of that CSS that isn't being used in Chrome is for folks on Safari or for people on mobile. And so it's not being used because it's only being used on mobile. Like, so you never want to just go like, oh, no one's using that CSS, like cut it out. You have to be smarter than that. But you can start like diagnosing issues. So I think the first thing to do is start diagnosing, see if this is a problem. And then you can start playing with the tools and seeing if you make these changes, does it actually speed up the web page? There are times, and there are blog posts out there where people actually say, I'm pretty sure that this is going to make your web page faster, and it actually makes the web page slower. So not all optimizations that everyone says is going to make your web page faster actually do. So it's also very important to make the change and then test. Did this actually make my web page faster? And
Yes.
so iterate through it, right? Make a change. Don't make like 30 changes at once. Make one change, see what happens, and then make another change.
I guess it's also safe then to say that, I mean, performance is more or less like a continuous thing and not really like a destination, right?
Right.
Especially as the metrics are changing, right?
Well, as the metrics changes, and then also as your web page changes, right? If people are constantly adding stuff to the web page, pages generally are not static. I mean, they may be a static page, but you're going to change the image on the web page. And if you change the image on the web page, you need to make sure that the image that you had there was optimized. If you put in a 30 megabyte image, let's actually go ahead and continue your thought there, but I'm going to try to find a web page that was really, really bad. And it's not a blog, it's a blog, it's a blog. Let's see if I can find this web page. I may not have named it. I didn't name the web page. All right, but anyway, there's a web page in Cameroon, and it had a whole bunch of images, and they had this image. It was named COVID, and it was 36 megabytes. So they changed the web page. They uploaded a COVID image, and it was like straight off their DSLR and RAW format or something, because it was a 36 megabyte image, and they just put it on the web page. And so obviously, if your web page is 2 megabytes and you upload a 36 megabyte image, it's going to be 38, and like your performance is going to go in the wrong direction.
Okay, so let me also now drive this home. For you specifically, right? What tools, when you're trying to go about, optimizing a web page, what tool do you stick with? Do you stick with Google Page Insights, Page Insights? Do you stick with Lighthouse, or do you just stick with web page tests?
I do a combination of web page test. I do use Lighthouse. I didn't talk about Lighthouse. So Lighthouse is actually built, you can run Lighthouse tests inside web page test. Where is it? I always have to look. But you can run Lighthouse inside web page test. Yes, capture a Lighthouse report. Lighthouse is also built into Chrome DevTools. You can run a Lighthouse test here as well. You can generate a Lighthouse report, and it gives you a report on both performance and accessibility. So I do use that. I use, in some ways I skip some of this when it comes to images, because I already know what Lighthouse is going to tell me, and so I know what to look for. And so I can go straight into just looking into the DevTools to see what I'm looking for. But yeah, so Lighthouse is another one we can put here. Lighthouse inside Chrome DevTools and in web page test. These are all great tools, and the other ones that have all been mentioned here, like perf.rocks, these are all great things to measure your web page. A lot of it will overlap, and each one will have different insights that maybe they dig a little deeper into different parts of how web pages load. So I would say use them all. Grab as much as you can from all of them, and then check out what you can find to make your page faster. The second trick with this is you'll see people, and if you are on Twitter, you'll see people trying to get the Lighthouse score of 100, and a 100 is a perfect score. And honestly, if you get Lighthouse 95, like be happy with that. Right? Get a really good score, get a score you're positive of, but at some point getting from 95 to 100 might be way too much work for very, very little performance, actual performance game. I mean, you can post it on Twitter that you got that 100, but you know that in 3 months there's going to be a new version of Lighthouse and you're not going to get 100 anymore. So, you know, use your judgment when you're making performance changes. If a Lighthouse says, make this performance change and you'll save 2 kilobytes, you might be like, right? I'll keep my Lighthouse score at 95. You know, I'm happy with that. It's not worth the time to save 2 more kilobytes.
Got it. Thank you for that. I guess another question that I would ask would be, as you start to think about mobile first, right? Especially in Africa, where we have a lot more people on their mobile devices. For example, the Bet Niger image that's just a link that was just shared, which
right.
On PageSpeed Insights, you get 93 on desktop, but on mobile, you get 15, right?
Right.
And it's just horrible, right? As you start to think about mobile, what are some of the, I know you have mentioned images, but what are some of the mindsets that you should kind of have as you get into that?
Yeah, I mean, again, like dimension-wise, this isn't an incorrectly sized image for mobile. I think the problem is where you're going to start getting your poor score is this. The other thing to think about on mobile, so sizing the images properly, on lower power devices, if the phone has to resize the image, it can take a really long time. I think with a mobile first, I think the other one that I sort of mentioned was like, if you have a video and you're not going to show it on the mobile device, make sure you're not actually downloading it on the mobile device, right? The Iowa climbing gym where you have 4 megabytes of downloads, and nobody actually ever sees the video if they're on mobile, that's painful, right? We're all paying for that data and 4 megabytes and I never get to see it and it's slowing down the web page. It should just be hidden. It should be removed. And then from a mobile first perspective, you can use JavaScript to only insert the things that are going to show up on mobile. So there are a lot of times where there are images on the big version. Let's see if I can do that here. Like maybe some of these images disappear when I go smaller. In this case, it looks like they're all still there, right? But there are times where when you make the page smaller, you start pulling sections. So you're like, this isn't as important for mobile. That kind of drives me mad because if it's important enough for the desktop, shouldn't you also make sure that you can show it up on mobile? My wife does a lot of her shopping on her phone. And it drives her nuts because there'll be times she's like, you know, why can't I filter on this? And I tell her, well, did you switch to the desktop view? And she does that. And then all of a sudden, all the options that she wants are available, but it doesn't actually work on mobile. She's actually gone to web pages where the shopping cart and the complete your purchase flow does not work on mobile. And if 60% of your customers are on mobile and they've put stuff in their cart, but then they can't complete their purchase, like that's a problem. you know, imagine if you came up with a solution that would increase the audience of people buying stuff by 60%, right? And it's because what you had before was broken. So I would, you know, we are a mobile first part of the world now, right? In Africa, in Europe, in North America, everybody is using their phones, many as a primary resource for browsing the web. So you want to make sure that everything actually works on the mobile device.
Great. So I think there's a question there.
Another question.
Maybe.
Oh, okay. some images are difficult to resize for ratio. So I'm actually working on a talk right now where how do you resize images? So like the traditional way to resize an image is just to make it smaller, right? So you have 1,000 pixels wide, 500 pixels wide, 400 pixels wide, or whatever it is for the different browsers that use it. So there are a lot of tools that will do that for you. I think actually Image Opt-in can, if you put an image in here, it could create 3 different versions for you if you ask it to. There are a lot of tools out there that will do that will create multiple versions for you. So you create a bunch of different versions and then you upload them, and then the picture tag in HTML can use the size of the screen to decide which image to download. So you set a width and you say for width of X, download the big one, for width of Y, download the medium one, and for width of Z, download the smallest one. Now, if you want to do some fancy stuff where like you crop the image different, let's go back to this one, right? Maybe for this image, this isn't a great example. Let's find a different example. Let's go to this one. Like maybe, let's remove my fancy thing. Like maybe you would want to crop it this way for mobile and this way for desktop. There's some machine learning tools out there that help with that. They can help you find where you should center the image. Like you wouldn't want to do it here. Maybe you'd want to do it around the foot. Because this is the athletics website, you might want to do it around the stadium, right? So you might crop it this way and then crop it this way. So finding the, are there automated ways to do this? There are some automated ways to do this, but you have to be really careful about it. You guys may have been aware, let's see if I've got this in my cache here, Twitter. This is one example of it. That didn't load it. Didn't load it. Here's the article. Let's go here. So this is Twitter uses machine learning to decide where to crop an image. So let's open up this tweet here. I think it's opening it. There it is. All right. So Twitter is deciding, I want to crop this image, and it finds the area with the most interest. The problem here is, of course, this is an image of he's the head of the Senate in America, a white guy, and this is Obama, obviously a black guy. You put the white guy on top, it picks the white guy. You put the black guy on top, it picks the white guy, right? So there are these algorithms that will find the most important part of the image, but most important is defined by the algorithm. And in this case, the algorithm is racist. I don't know how else to say it. I've actually been playing with this algorithm as well with pictures of men and women, and it always picks the man over the woman. And that's pretty bad too. So there are tools that will help you do auto cropping, but you got to be careful about it because the algorithms are still, let's just say they're in their infancy, not that they're racist or misogynist, right? If it always picks the white guy over the white woman or the white guy over the black guy I haven't seen one where it did a black man and a black woman, but still, like, this is really, really bad. So, like, this one actually, it screwed it up because when the image was upside down, it didn't know what to do. So people are trying all these things to see what happens. But like, when you see tools that will do auto cropping, like take them with a grain of salt and test them for your
Specific audience?
Yeah, for your audience, because obviously, if you're building web pages for Africa and it won't find African faces, that's a problem.
As a disaster even before
it,
launch.
it's kind of a disaster, and I mean, what I love about the Nigerian tech scene is that you are bringing some much needed perspective from different, right? You're bringing that perspective in, right? You guys are hopefully help coming in, and as you start building the tech, you know, hopefully it'll start finding the black guy and not finding me, right? It's only, you know, like, let's make sure that these things work out properly.
Okay, so there's one other question that's been dropped there.
Is there a maximum image file size a website should have? No. You know, that's actually is a good question. So their web pages, like this web page has a 10 megabyte GIF, right? GIFs are different than JPEGs. I'd say make sure that it fits what your audience is trying to do. In general, there's no need for an image. Whoa, I don't know what I did. All right. Like these images don't need to be 500K. They can be 200-300K. When I see images that are over a megabyte, like that's an immediate, like we have an optimization that can be done here. Like I showed, like this COVID image, there was a 36 megabyte image on a web page. I wouldn't say there's a max. You want to make sure the images look good to your end user. But if they get too big, you should think about like, why am I putting a 4 megabyte image on my web page?
Thank you so much. Questions? Any other comments? We had booked for about an hour, 30 minutes. So any other comments? We do have someone else here as well, Charles, who has been building highly performance web applications, and he is also offered to come and share some of, an application I recently built, and also just share something around how we thought about building and implementing this. Okay, I think there are more questions for Doug in the chat, but be very good with.
Is there
you just want to take this before?
If you don't mind, I can go. A good way to optimize a background video for mobile. So remove the audio, and then you can use JavaScript to serve the right size video, or you can use streaming to serve the right size video, so you have a mobile version and a desktop version. You can get really granular with this. Like sometimes people put background videos that are like, and then they throw a CSS texture on top of it. So if you throw a CSS texture on top of the video to like blur it, you could just like really, so they'll have a beautifully rendered video and then they blur it with CSS. Well, if you're going to blur the crap out of the video, blur the video to make the video really small. So you can lower the quality of the video so it doesn't look really great, but you're blurring it, so who cares? And then it'll still look great, but it'll be a lot smaller. So there's a lot of different things you can do to make sure that your video is smaller. There was a NBC in America, they had a background video that they put a blur over it, and the background video was like 10 megabytes. But I like compressed it really, really small, so it was super compressed, and you couldn't tell the difference with the CSS blur, and I made it like less than 1 megabyte. So there's a lot of different games that we can play to make them smaller.
Okay, I hope that does answer your question. We're minutes before we, so if you do have any question for Doug, now would be a good time to ask it.
And if you have more questions, I am on Twitter. I'm Doug Sillers on Twitter. Or you can pop me an email or whatever, but Twitter's probably the easiest way.
Good. Okay, so thank you very much, Doug, for taking time out to share with us. I know that this is the weekend, so there could have been like a lot of other things that you could have been up to. So it's really nice that you decided to come and share your experience with us. That's really appreciated. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course.
Like Doug has mentioned, it's still very much available on social media. So reach out to him on Doug Silas. If you are not able to directly, just find his handle, you can go to the GDG Twitter handle as well. You'll be able to, if you scroll through, you'll see we tagged him on some of the posts that were made regarding this session. So you can just go through there as well. So right about now, I guess I will just, Charles, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
Can check. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So yeah, Charles, if you just want to go ahead.
Yeah, thanks a lot. First of all, apologies, my video won't be on today. My webcam kind of died on me yesterday, so you guys will be able to see my face. But I hope my audio is good. So if there are any issues with that, please just let me know. So I know we really don't have that much time. I just wanted to take a few minutes to show something really small, something little that I built recently, and some of the thoughts that I put in to get it to the point where it is performance-wise. So let me share my screen. And it says I am disabled. I cannot share my screen. So I think, Aliyah, I need your help. Okay, I think I can share now. So let me share my screen. I'll share my entire screen. And so basically, this is the GitHub repo. You guys can go there to, my repo smart search. It's a tiny little, mostly JavaScript based web app. It's still work in progress. I'm not a UI, UX person, so nothing really fancy here. But what I was trying to demonstrate with this app, it's not a real life scenario, so you might not have that sort of scenario ever. But I was trying to sort of create a scenario where if you needed to load so much data into a web app and sort of handle that much data in your app in a performant way, how would you do it? I know that images and videos are the primary sort of type of content that we load on web pages, but so this is not sort of
hey Charles, if you could just increase the volume a little bit. I think there's some comments about the audio being low.
Okay.
Charles doesn't really speak that loud, so.
Oh yeah, sorry. How is this now? Is this better?
I think this should be good.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I'm a I'm a light speaker. Okay, so what I was saying is basically this app tries to simulate a problem where you are trying to load a lot of data into your web app, right? Ideally, if you control the backend, you will control the amount of data that's coming into your web app. But let's say we don't control the backend, right? Let's say we have a web app that is trying to load information about a bunch of developers. Like imagine all these surveys that Stack Overflow and all of like Node.js does. And, they have a backend API that exposes all that data about developers. And imagine that when you hit that server, it just throws like data of 50,000 developers or, like 100,000 developers at you. So that's the scenario I was trying to create. Like, so if you have a web app where you're trying to build something and you hit a backend server and it just throws a ton of JSON data to you, how might we be able to approach, building a web app that handles that much data in a performant way. So I know, though, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly. He did say, it might be gimmicky to try to hit, 100 on a Lighthouse. This does hit 100, but again, take this with a grain of salt, because this is a novelty, fictitious application. This is not a real life application, and so this is not something to stand by. But I think what I just really want to highlight and sort of build a tangent off will be this picture here. This is me trying to evaluate the runtime performance of the app using Chrome DevTools, and I'm using the profiler here. So what I would like to do for the next maybe 3 to 5 minutes is just basically open the app and show you guys what it does. So this is the URL here. I'll open it in a new tab. Like I said, nothing fancy. It just loads. So when this app loads, you get a bunch of sort of developer information that is sent to you, and the data comes in JSON. And what I felt like it would be really, really good to highlight will be, so I'm trying to open my Chrome DevTools here, will be the fact that, one, a number of the performance conversations sort of tend to focus on load performance. Some of the things that our initial speaker said were sort of focus on load performance. And that's really, really good, because when your users go to your website, the first thing that they experience in the first few minutes are impacted by load performance. But one other area of performance that sometimes we don't dwell too much on and sort of gloss over is, okay, the app has loaded right now. As the user begins to interact with the app, what happens? As they click that button, as they click that link, as they're adding items to their shopping cart, like what's the performance of that? Are they able to click a button and then everything freezes? Can they still scroll? When they resize, the app on the mobile device, does it take so long because the app needs to do so many things before things begin to work again in that new orientation? So that sort of area of the app has loaded, things are running right now, how does it perform, is one of the areas I wanted to focus this on. So we've loaded the data is in here, and the scenario we have is we have a ton of data. So if you look at the console, I'm saying I'm fetching 1,500 records. So the JSON is sort of a little bit large. And now we've presented this to the user, and we imagine that the user is now trying to search. So I have 1,500 records. Let's imagine that Ali's record is here, and I'm trying to search for Ali. How will this app try to handle, everything client side? Remember, we don't have control over the server. Try to do some sort of interaction on the client in a way that doesn't degrade performance. So that's the scenario that's being painted here. And there are just two things I want to highlight. I don't know if I have much time. Number one thing I want to highlight is there's been in a school of thought recently. I think it was sort of one of the major proponents was I think Dasuma, who is in the Chrome the dev team, where he was saying that the UI thread should be left to do only UI things, right? And every other thing that our application does, as much as possible, we should move that to a web worker. So that's the first thing I want to highlight. That's one of the major things I did here. And so what he meant with that, and what I try to do here, is the UI thread, which is the engine of the browser that executes your JavaScript, is single threaded. You can only do one thing at a time. And so when you try to do too much on that UI thread, you frustrate the user, because the page becomes janky. The user cannot click around. They can't scroll. That's because you're doing everything. So everything like event listeners, state management, all your business logic that's related to the client side, you are doing everything on that single UI thread. It sort of freezes, creates a subpar performance, and makes the app janky. So what Dasuma was saying is, let's use the UI thread for only UI things, only things like rendering. You have the data now, you want to render, or you just want to listen to, an event. A user has clicked a button, just want to handle, add event listeners to that button and sort of respond to that event. So things that are related to putting things on the UI should only be things that we do on that sort of UI thread. And his proposition was, if we move the rest, like those heavy duty things, like state management and the core of what makes this app run, if we move that to a web worker, that we could get significant performance. Primarily because the web worker is not, the things that run there do not sort of impact the UI. So the user can continue to do what they want to do. They can continue scrolling around and there will be almost no impact on their experience. And even if the web worker takes a long time to finish his work, it can sort of, asynchronously post that, status back to the UI, and the UI can just do the UI things, can render. So that's the number one thing I did here, which is the UI only does UI things and almost every other work. And in this scenario, this searching, I'm going to search now, this searching, for whatever I want to search for the developer sort of happens in a web worker. And that gave me a significant boost. So that's the number one thing to highlight, that as you build your apps with JavaScript, with React, Vue, I don't know exactly how these things are done in those environments, but there definitely are ways, maybe plugins or best practices that you can sort of split your UI work and the rest of of your work. You can sort of split them and put those heavy duty things in the web worker. So what I did here is when I type into the text box and I put a query here, the UI just knows that, okay, there's a listener on this input, is listening for what I've typed. It takes the inputs and then it just sort of forwards that to the web worker. And then the web worker says, oh, okay, this user is trying to search. The web worker has access to the 1,500 records. It does the query, it does the search. I did some sort of, binary search algorithm thing, but that's not really what matters. What matters is that the data and the state management and everything is in the web worker. The web worker does the search, and then when he finds the records, he sort of say, hey, we have 10 engineers or 10 developers that matches your query. It gives that message back to the UI. Say, hey, here are the 10 engineers, and the UI only just renders. It just renders the 10 results, and that's all the UI does. And so if I'll do a very quick demo. So I did some fancy search queries here. That's not that's not what I want to highlight with this demo. I think what I just wanted to show is like generally how fast it takes to search, even though we have 1,500. And I tested this with very huge amounts of data. I went up to 50K, and it was still very fast. Okay, so like this search is taking like a few milliseconds to happen. We are able to find 12 matches. There are 58 matches, sorry, and it's displaying 12 right now. And it did this in, you can see that it says, where did it say that? So we found 58 matches in 4 milliseconds. And this is because we've combed through 1,500 records and we found our matches, and it did all of that in 4 milliseconds because the search is happening in the web worker. And all that time, the UI was free for the user to do whatever they needed to do. And so that's the first thing to highlight. The next thing to highlight, again, I don't know how much time I have, is I can come back and expatiate more. But the second major conversation area is using this performance tab in Chrome DevTools allowed me to sort of evaluate how this app was performing or how this app will perform. And the reason why I'm saying that is that generally, developers, we have very powerful machines. Like right now, I'm actually using a Chromebox. I decided to experiment on a new hardware. So I got a Chromebox. You guys want to know what it is, you can Google it. It's just a mini PC. And so it's really super fast. But this is not the kind of machines that our users will be having. They might be on the desktop. It might be fast. It might not be that fast. We are in Africa. Most of our users are going to be on mobile. Mobile devices might not be that powerful. They might, have some issues with how much they can compute at a given time, memory, and all of that. And so one of the things I think is important, to talk about in this area of how does your app perform when it's running, is for you to simulate that as you develop. And so you can do that using this performance tab here and using these two controls. So if you wanted to see generally how your app will do in a slower network, you sort of throttle the network here to fast 3G, slow 3G, and all of that. But what I wanted to do is to sort of throttle this to, 4x slow down. I think before I even do this, maybe let's try and see how we can, let's see how this app even performs, in the typical, using all of our hardware, using all of my hardware right now. And so if I do a recording, I'll record performance now. I'll do a simple search. Right, we have our results back. And if I look at the profiler, you will see that, it's all green. There's no junk, and there's almost nothing here. There's a big red here anyway, and this is there is a cumulative layout shift. I guess, like, our initial speaker said, I need to, properly do my layout and reserve the right amount of space so that things don't shift. There might be something that's shifting right now. A number of things are shifting. But apart from that layout shift, in terms of like the JavaScript that executes and runs, and does the search, everything is green here. But then again, this might not be the experience that my users might have, because they might not be on this sort of device. So one way to sort of begin to understand, and begin to surface what you might need to start paying attention to performance-wise, is to throttle your CPU. And so if I go to 4x CPU slowdown, and I clear this performance result that I have, I can record again and do a quick search. I get to over 48, I can stop recording, and I can see what the profiler tells me. And so the profiler tells me that, so we begin to see these red, areas as where we might want to begin to look at. So if I sort of zoom in into this portion where there's a red, where there's like a red marker there, I can begin to see that, okay, there was a task that was running here, and it sort of exceeded the amount of time that was supposed to run. So this begins to give me an idea of, okay, is this bad? Is this bad enough for me to like begin to spend time to optimize it? But at least I have an idea of where there might be performance issues, not just how the app is loading right now, but when users are actually using my app, right? I can begin to see some of the areas to look at, and I can dive in and see what's going on. So I think what's going on here right now is, you can see real calculate style is one of the, I think, steps that happens in the, I think it's called critical rendering part. So after my app has found the results and it has sort of updated the UI with the results, the app is trying to like recalculate the, the CSS, like reapply the CSS, and recalculate like the dimension of things like that, and we lay out the page, and that is taking the bulk of the time here. So maybe that can be an area that I look at, because if I can reduce this large purple, I can sort of reduce this overall task that is exceeding the time that it should be taken. And when I say that time that should be taken, I think if I recall correctly, all our tasks should be below 50 milliseconds, I think. And so this is taking 65 milliseconds. So I'm 15 milliseconds above budget here. And so that's basically the two things I wanted to highlight, that, or I'll say three things. One is, most performance conversations seem to focus on load performance, and that is fine, because like I said, that is the first thing the users will experience. If your site is slow to load, your users won't even be able to wait enough to, use your app. And so load performance is fine for us to prioritize. But another thing to also keep in mind is, beyond load performance, how does your app perform when things have loaded and the users are now in there and they're trying to get things done? They're trying to like log in, they're trying to, click a button and actually get the work that they got there to do, get that work done. And this whole experience tries to simulate that. It tries to do that by saying, we have a ton of data, we expect the user to search. When the user searches, how will this app perform in trying to like find that 48 engineers that were born in 1989 out of 1,500 engineers. And how I approached this was to sort of experiment with Dasuma's recommendation of making my UI do only UI things. My UI only just renders these sort of placeholders and this area, just renders these things, attaches event listeners to one or two UI controls, but the actual searching of the data doesn't happen in the UI thread. It happens in a JavaScript file that's in the web worker, and that sort of significantly improved the performance of what it improved the experience that the users will have as they are trying to search. And then the third thing I did say is, I haven't done that. It's not okay to assume that things are working well. You actually want to at least try and get a sense of how this might perform in real life by throttling your network. You can throttle your network, and you can also throttle your CPU. So I've done the throttling both for 4x slowdown and for 6x slowdown, and I know exactly the areas I need to improve. And so that's the recommendation I'm giving. That if you throttle, you will begin to get a sense of the sort of performance bottlenecks that might be happening to your users that might be on this sort of kind of hardware that this throttling is trying to simulate. So that's all. I don't know how much time I have, Ali. I can go into more details, but I think I can cap it here now and take any questions if there are. But those are the three things I wanted to highlight. Also focus on the runtime performance of your app. Try as much as possible to separate, UI things and keep them on the UI, and then almost every other thing, push them to a web worker if you can. Your libraries, React, Vue, and all of that have support for some of those things. Leverage them as much as possible, and then try to evaluate, how your users will experience what you're building by not using your hardware to the fullest, by throttling your hardware. Yeah, that's what I wanted to share.
Okay, super. Thank you, Charles. Definitely learned a few things there. I mean, awesome, all green, all true. That's really wonderful. One question that I think someone has asked is, can you kindly share resource to the article about separating UI things you're making reference to?
Yeah, sure, I can definitely do that. So I can send that to you, but let me just do a very quick search right now. I think I always have a problem spelling his name. Soma. I will get that across to you. UI thread, or I think I know what to search for. Comlink. Comlink is sort of library that he built to enable people make the best of web workers. Okay, so I can't get the exact URL right now. I can send that across to you. But if you search for Comlink, almost anything that will come up from Comlink will reference that someone's article. But I'll send it to you.
Okay, we can always drop that. You can look out for the link on our Twitter page. We'll share that as soon as we're able to do that as well. Any questions for Charles? Anything you want him to answer, to speak specifically to? We are close to the event, so now would be a good time to ask the questions, if any. Okay, so Charles, is this available publicly? Can people clone this and just kind of, or this?
Sorry, that was a little bit choppy. Can you say that again?
I said, is the project available publicly? Is it something that people can take a look at?
Oh yeah, it is. So this is it. So this is my GitHub profile. So github.com/Chalu. And I think it's one of my pinned repos. So it's this smart search one. So you can go there and clone it and fork it and all of that. But like I said, it's work in progress. I actually ought to have moved this substantially to the finish line, but I've not had enough time. But I think I'll be doing that in a couple of weeks with a number of things I want to add. But yeah, it's available. You can take a look and yeah, let me know what you think.
Great. I have also dropped a link in the chat. I hope that is, yes, that is it. So if there are no more questions, going 1, 2, going 3. Isn't that wonderful? Looks like Charles, you did address all of the questions that might potentially pop up. Yes, this session was recorded, and we'll clean things up, and then we'll be posting it on our YouTube channel. So subscribe to GDG Lagos on YouTube, as well as join the GDG Lagos page on GDG Dev Community. I think I would also drop that in here. Okay, and I think but you can definitely go ahead to, if you go to our Twitter page as well, you can catch up with GDG activities on there as well. And reach out to us about any other thing, and we'll be willing to, 1 minute, so that I can drop the link to the, okay.
Ali, I just dropped the link to Dasoma's article. I think one of the participants actually helped with the link.
Okay, great. Great. So the link to the Dasoma article is in the chat, as well as the link to the official GDG Lagos page online. If you're not aware, we've recently moved from Meetup to a new platform that helps us engage you as a community more, where you'll be able to keep up with past and future events. So join. I've dropped the link in the chat. If there are no questions for Charles, I think we can officially say a big thank you to Charles for deciding to share the awesomeness that you're working on. And thank you to everyone who has taken time to join this session. Our next event is happening on the 17th of October, and that is DevFest Lagos. It promises to be very insightful. We have tons of activities packed for you on that day. If you follow the link that I dropped, you also see you'll see a way to register for DevFest Lagos on there as well. So thank you very much, everyone. It was nice having you here. Do enjoy the rest of your day.